All right, welcome back to the little garage where I am working on my 1982 Honda Goldwing. And in the last video, we just started taking a look at the bike, did a startup, and started taking apart the top of the tank and took out the carburetor. So if you're interested in seeing that, go back and check for that video. In this video, I want to clean up the area a little bit where I'm going to be measuring, and then we're going to be measuring to build a CAD drawing, essentially, of the frame and what's left of the motor there. And that way I can start planning what I'm going to replace the carburetors with. So let's get started with that. I'm going to set you down and we're going to just start cleaning up a little bit. In the meantime, also, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the system that I'm going to put in here. I had a few questions on the forum and stuff like that, so I'll answer those questions as well. Let's get going. All right, so you can see we've got the carbs removed, which normally sit right here, and a lot of the electronics removed as well. And the idea is that we're going to measure up this spot to fabricate an intake plenum that will work with a throttle body rather than the carbs. So I'm just going to start wiping this down a little bit while I talk to you. It's a little bit grungy. I just don't want to get my hands all dirty like last time. So I know a lot of people have said, why are you doing this? Why are you changing from carbs to computer-controlled everything? Is it because the carbs are bad? And when I say no, then typically people get really upset with me. If it's running so good, why are you doing this? What are you trying to fix? If it's not broken, don't fix it. And I absolutely agree with that philosophy. This bike does run really well, and I've had fun with it. I don't ride too much. I just kind of ride around town a little bit here and there. I haven't done any touring or anything like that. In fact, when I got the bike, I immediately took all the fairings off before I even drove it. So I didn't even drive it as a full dressed bike. I literally started it up, made sure it was running well, and then started taking it apart. And that is kind of the answer to the question of why are you doing this if there's nothing wrong with it? And it's literally because I want to. When I originally bought this bike, I wasn't even thinking that much about riding it, about how fun it would be to ride it. Although it is fun to ride. I was thinking primarily about the project and what I wanted to do with it, because I am a tinkerer, I'm a troubleshooter, I like figuring things out. And so that's the primary reason. I wanted to try it. I wanted this challenge of changing something from carbureted to computer-controlled fuel and ignition. And so when I started doing research, I found a few different people who had tried it, and some people had been successful, some people had not. It's not a common thing to do, especially with a bike that's really well engineered. The carburetors on this, when they're tuned right, when they're clean and working well, they are amazing on this bike. So the challenge is to make the bike run even better on electronically controlled ignition and fuel. All right, I think that's about as far as I'm going to go with cleaning. I'm going to leave these wires here. Now, one of my goals, which I thought would kind of prove it would be the proof of concept. What would be the proof that this thing runs better with EFI and electronic ignition than a carbureted system does? And the proof of concept, I guess, that I wanted to achieve, the achievement that would prove that it works, would be to ride this bike up Pikes Peak. Now, not in any kind of race or anything like that, not competing, literally just to be able to make it up Pikes Peak. Now, I know these go up Pikes Peak all the time. It's not that big of a deal. But a carbureted system does not perform the same at low altitude as it does at high altitude. It is able to adjust a little bit, but with EFI and ECU on this, I should be able to make it so that it goes up and down and automatically adjusts and runs smoothly and strong all the way up and all the way down. So high altitude and low altitude. Some of you might say, well, that's not really a big deal. Fine. That's okay. It's what I want to achieve. So it's not some huge grandiose thing. It is a personal thing that I want to be able to try. So that was the kind of the proof of concept that I thought would be the goal. I'm going to need to have a goal so I don't get frustrated, I don't get annoyed with this project, because a lot of people have actually tried to convert these to EFI and ECU controlled ignition, and they've basically stopped or given up because it's tricky. It's not an easy thing to do. So I'm excited to try it. I want to talk a little bit about the ECU that I'm going to use, but I need to get started here doing some measurements. The other thing is I'm going to do all the measurements in millimeters. I realize that's a big no-no for some people, but for myself, it's actually easier for me to think in millimeters because I've been living overseas, and when I've done intricate measurements, detailed measurements, I've been using millimeters. So that's what's easy for me. Deal with it. The bike is in millimeters anyway. It's a millimeter bike. So I'm going to get some paper and get a little plan for what I'm going to measure. Actually, before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about this right here. So this is the air box. I'll move back just a little bit. Get a better picture. This is the air box that comes on the bike. It mates right up to the carbs, the top of the carbs, and it's got two vents, one for each side of the engine. This is a drain, and this is engine. So this one mates up to the engine. It says right on the back, actually. Engine and drain. So this drains out the bottom, and this is the vent for the engine. This is a nice airbox. It's a little bit big, but it's pretty nice. And one of the things I'm thinking is, why recreate this if I don't have to? It fits in the spot really well. It's engineered to fit there, and it works fine. It's possible that I might need more airflow than what this is able to provide, but I doubt it. I think that this is going to be fine. It is pretty tall, which is a little bit annoying. Excuse me. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure up the space with it and without it. I'm going to put this in here just the way that it normally sits, so you can kind of see where it goes. Move this out of the way a little bit. Okay, so it sits right there, pretty much. And it does protrude down a little bit further than what I would like, I think. So from the bottom of the airbox, this piece that actually mates up to the carbs is pretty tall. I feel like that's pretty big. That's taken up a huge amount of space. But either way, I like the idea of not having to refabricate that, remake a different air filter. You know, I can go and say, you know, I want the air filter for this bike, and it will still fit if I use this. I don't have to find a custom air filter. So, I'm not sure. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I should keep this airbox and then just build the intake plenum to fit here. I mean, the intake plenum doesn't have to be huge, but there has to be enough space in there for a few different things. All right, I got some paper, got a little table here. We can start doing some measuring. So, the ECU that I'm going to go with, and I'll try and put this up on the screen, is Speedwino. It is called the Ocelot, and it's pretty capable. I think it's the latest, best option. You can run pretty much any type of engine off of it. It has 4 ignition channels, 4 injector channels, 4 high current outputs. It's got 8 low current outputs for fuel pump, tach, things like that. It also has a stepper idle control built in. It has 2 trigger inputs. It's got a barometer on board for map, voltage correction, throttle position, which we won't be using. Yeah, it's got a lot. So I think that this is going to be well more than capable. In fact, it's probably significantly more than what I need, but it's going to make it, I think it's going to make this easier. So I'm not going to be doing wasted spark setup. I'm going to go with just direct signal for the spark. Okay, let's do some measurement. If you've got any comments about that or any ideas, I know a lot of people have done the wasted spark setup, and a few people have been okay with it, but there's a lot of noise involved. I don't know. It just seems to me that the direct option is better for doing spark ignition. If you've got any comments or questions about that, please let me know in the comments or over in the forum as well. So let's see how much room I have here. I've got a little mini, my little mini tape, so I can get in here. So from the bottom of that to the top of this is pretty much exactly 9 centimeters. Remember, I'm going to be going in metric. Okay. So one of the things that I thought about when you look at this is this opening. If I was to use this opening, I might actually be able to fit the entire throttle body, or at least a part of it, the top part of it, up inside of this to give myself a little bit more space. I haven't figured out what throttle body I want to use yet, but it's possible. See, this is a big metal piece. I guess I can take the filter out of this for now. I realize this video is going to be a lot of just me talking, and I know that's kind of boring, but this is the process. This is what's required to get this stuff figured out. I'm just going to take the filter out. So this metal piece, there's the metal piece, and then it's got this rubber gasket that kind of goes over top. It's possible that I could, you see how it's the opening is a little bit smaller than the actual piece here. I might be able to get a throttle body that fits inside, or at least the opening, the intake of that would be able to slide up inside of here and then fit inside of this as well with a little bit of modification. So that would give me a little bit more space if I do decide to use this air box. So that's a possibility. I have to also keep in mind this vent that goes to the crankcase. So I kind of need to figure out what I'm going to do here. This is just a kind of stand back and look at it. Now that the carbs are out, because I've been looking at this for a long time, but with the carbs in. So now that they're out, I can actually see, I can see everything now. I've got a little basically 90, but if I was able to tuck that up in there, that bolt, there's a bolt right there that's sticking up a little bit. So it's about 85 mil. 85 mil to the top of that bolt. Just seems like the highest point here. Let me bring you a little bit closer. Yeah. So you can see there's a bolt right here. These are the for coolant. So there's coolant pipes, tubes that run here, and to the other side as well. I remember what I wanted to show you. So if I line you up with the intake port of this cylinder right here, you should be able to look right across to the intake port on the other side, which is right here. And what you will notice is that it is offset. So if I put this straight in line, you can see that, okay, that's pretty much square with this intake port. You can see that that one is offset to the left. this one right here. So that right there is in line with the intake port on this side. So if it's offset to the left there, same thing here. So these two on this side are offset to the left a little bit from those two. And I have to remember that we're going to have to calculate how far offset they are. I think that I have also decided that I'm going to reuse the original intake runners here. So what I might do is just quickly screw those back on so that I'll be able to help with measurements a little bit. So let me put you into time lapse, and I'm going to put these intake runners back on. All right, I've got those back on. They're just snugged down, finger tight. And now I'm going to take a look at the measurements a little bit. The other thing that I have to remember is that there needs to be a place for coils. Because with the ignition being computer controlled, I'm probably going to be using a different type of coil than what is on the bike. There is space up here for that, but I'm planning to put the ECU right there as well. Now the ECU is not large, but I just have to manage the space really, really well. I also need to remember that there's a tank over here, the overflow tank for the coolant. Okay, let's get the measuring stick out here. Measure between these two. It's tough to measure that because it's offset. Okay, so from the edge of that one over there to this one is 318. Of course, there is a lip inside of there that whatever this mates up to slides inside of, but I'll just subtract that. So from there to there, 318 mil horizontally. And then we've got the gas tank right here. We've also got the fuel filter right here that's taken up a little bit of space. There's also a sensor right here, looks like, that is protruding a little bit on this side. I also don't want to block access to this right here. Let me get a better view of that. There is get a light. This port right here is the window to be able to see the timing marks on the crank. So I cannot block, I don't want to block access to that either, because that is what helps you set the timing. You can see over there, there's a sensor coming out of the top of the block there. There's a temperature sensor down here as well, going into the side of the coolant manifold. but that's not going to be in our way really. So let me get a basic box shape. See what kind of space I'm working with here. So we had what, 318 mil? 318 mil that way. Let me use this and kind of measure our front to back. There's a seam in the gas tank that protrudes out a little bit on this side, which I'm going to have to account for. Either make it exactly that big, which I probably want to do anyway to allow access to this. So let me measure it on that side. Front to back. And it kind of tapers down a little bit. Looks like we have... Oh, interesting. So this front piece here, it actually is further back, or it's further forward on this side than it is on this side, because to allow space for this intake. So it's not exactly straight all the way across, which is really difficult to see when the carbs are still in there. I also have the back of the cooling fan right here, which is massive. I mean, the motor of the cooling fan is huge. I'm actually thinking about replacing this cooling fan with a much lower profile cooling fan, and that will give me a little bit more space as well. But in general, front to back, what I have is 20 centimeters. 20 centimeters. That's from the seam on the gas tank to this edge because it's closer. If I didn't have to worry about either of those, it would actually be something like 24 centimeters that I have, 23 and a half to work with. But because this side protrudes that way, and this little seam on the gas tank sticks out so far, I've got 20 centimeters. So it's looking by 20 by 320 almost. 20 centimeters by, 20 by 32. 20 by 32 centimeters, and then height-wise, I basically have 9. 8 to be safe, but 9. So it's not a lot of space. It's not a lot of space to work with. Now, if I didn't have this air box in here, oh man, I would still have to have a place for a filter. But, I mean, this is up to the top of the gas tank is like 30 centimeters or more. Something like 32 centimeters. Obviously, the gas tank slopes down, but there's a lot more space when that air box is not there. A lot. You know, one of the things I could do is just run a cone filter, but those can be so tricky to tune. To have a nice big air box like this is better. Okay, so those are the measurements that I basically have. If I was to measure down to the top of the engine, then I have something like 12 centimeters to the top of the engine there. But I think what I'm going to do is design something that fits within that 20 or 19. All right, so I think I'm going to go with those measurements, which is basically 23. Is that what it was? Yeah, 23. It's 21 and a half. Or sorry, 31 and a half centimeters from there to there. 20 essentially inside of here. About 20 by 9. So I need to decide what I'm going to do. I'm going to start mocking up that space in CAD so that I know, and then once I have that box or that open space in CAD, then I can start modifying it to fit these, start measuring across to see how far, what the offset is. So I'm going to work with that. I know this has been a super boring video, but this is just what I have to do. This is part of the process to make this work. Thanks guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you want. I'm not monetizing these videos at all, so I'm not trying to make any money off of it.